Remember the 5th of November.
Technically, as you're watching this, it's November the 7th, the day after Election Day. Or yesterday's yesterday.
Yesterday.
But I filmed this on the 5th, so we're going with that. Anyway, today's topic is one I've seen proliferating around the men's rights side of social media for some time now in the lead up to today's
Tuesdays
polls. And that is the misguided but nonetheless growing sentiment that our country, specifically our country's men, would be better off if we were to repeal the 19th. Which, for those of you who are perhaps unaware, the 19th Amendment is the one that gave women the right to vote in federal elections. Those supporting the repeal are largely laboring under the mistaken belief that because women make up 51% of the population and are the majority of registered voters, it's our fault for the current state of affairs. Yes, I know, women are being blamed for something shocking. And while there are certainly a multitude of current societal ills which can be laid squarely and fairly at our feet, this, I'm sorry to say, is not one of them. First off, women are not a monolith. I know modern feminism would have you believe we are, but we are not. Men, by the way, are not a monolith either. So for those ladies out there who are part of the "it's some men, therefore it's all men" crowd, sit down and be quiet because you're making the rest of us look bad. Even 100 years ago, when women's suffrage was making headlines all across the country, our forebears were divided on the issue, with a surprising majority of women opposed rather than for. Contrary to what the revisionist historians and most modern feminists today would love to tell people, the National Association for the Opposition of Women's Suffrage actually had more members than the National Association for Women's Suffrage. This pamphlet, printed in 1913 and circulated widely in a popular women's magazine of the time, highlights two of the main reasons so many women were vehemently set against the proposed amendment. The first, subjecting an unwilling majority to the will of a minority, and the second, allowing those exempt from the consequences of a decision to have a say in making it. Two issues which, even 100 years later, are still very relevant in today's discourse, particularly the latter. It goes without saying that equal rights should come with equal responsibility, and yet to this day, women are largely exempt from things like the selective service requirements as a consequence of exercising their right to vote. It wasn't fair then, and guess what? It's not fair now. But I digress. My main problem with the Repeal the 19th crowd is that they're hypocrites. The same people that routinely accuse modern women of lacking any and all accountability
is kryptonite.
Are in blaming women attempting to do the same thing. But Lindsay, how? I'll tell you. These same guys who want to take away women's right to vote aren't registered to vote themselves, or if they are, don't vote because they're convinced themselves their vote doesn't matter, which doesn't make any sense because 1 plus 0 still equals 1, whereas 1 minus 1 equals 0. The way to cancel out a bad vote or a vote with which you disagree is not to not vote, but to vote against it. See? Math, logic, science. Woot! Moving on. Ironically, when asked specifically why they think women shouldn't be allowed to vote, they almost always answer they almost always answer that women shouldn't be allowed to vote because women vote based on their emotions rather than reason. A statement which in and of itself is an appeal to emotion, thus disqualifying them from voting based on the same criteria. In conclusion, we have arrived at one of my absolute favorite sayings. You know, I should really just make bingo cards with all of my favorite squirrelyisms, or maybe make it a drinking game. What do you guys think? Thoughts? One of my absolute favorite sayings: evil prevails when good men do nothing, and bonus saying, there is complicity in silence. In the words of a very old, very famous, and very wise talking frog. No, not that one. This one. Do or do not. There is no try. Well, that's all, guys. Thanks for listening to me ramble. It's greatly appreciated. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check the description box below for links to my other socials. Additionally, be sure to check out my podcast, Boy Meets Squirrel, which I do live every Wednesday from 3 to 4:30 Central with my partner in crime, Dan from Men to Meet. Partner in crime, Dan from Need to Be Heard. Until next time, y'all, cheers!